Alright, this is a very crude video to show how we're going to assemble the EFI ITBs onto a SPICA manifold for the SPICA conversion. That obviously was the completed unit. This is the ITB that we're using. This is the adapter plate and some of the parts and tools associated with it. I'm going to try to do this one-handed, which is going to be kind of a trick as well. So bear with me here. I'm going to pause. Okay, through the magic of video, I have opened this canister of Old Bull grease. Who knows what it is? I'm just using it as a tackifying agent when we put these O-ring seals in the grooves. That'll dissipate pretty readily. You could use pretty much any kind of a grease. Again, it's just there to hold this in temporarily until we put the adapter plate into position. All right, so the adapter plate is going to go on like so. However, there's a real sequence to how this goes together, including these top pins here. So these are going to fit in here, and because there's so little space here, this will go on first. And I'm going to try to, again, do this one-handed. Lay this in. Obviously, okay. All right, let's see if I can do this so that you could actually see what I'm doing here. Still can't quite see it, but whatever. I think the intent is pretty obvious. I'm going to put that in, get these screws into position. So take a little maneuvering here. They will eventually come up. So obviously at some point we're going to be screwing those in, but see, that interferes, that hits that, so that's why we have to put those in first. Not a big deal. Next, whoops. This is really challenging for someone like me. Bear with me. There we go. Okay. Next up would be to run the nuts on here, but again, you can see where there's a bit of an interference, so we have to open that back up. We'll use these spring washers first. Don't really think they are needed, but they're part of the kit, so we'll use them. And then we got to spread this open enough so that I can get the head of the nut in here. Like I say, right now, I really can't get it in there. So I'm going to pause this for a second. And you can see now that I've got a gap enough that I could get this nut in. Couldn't get my arthritic hands to work properly. There's one. There's two. This is a pretty exciting video, I must admit. Okay, once you got that started, that over. And we're going to take our short M8s and apply some thread locker in there, on there. That was good. Like I always use too much thread locker. And drop that into position. And tighten that down. All right, like any good mechanic knows, you want to just snug them up, and then you're going to tighten these, which we'll do rather awkwardly with a 13 millimeter. Need to watch this, so I'm going to pause again. Okay, so that's all done, as well as these are tightened, and just be sure to snug them in some kind of an X pattern so that you're not getting this cocked. Those rubber O-rings are in there. They'll take up any kind of a gap, and this is obviously a pretty thick spacer plate, so it's not likely that you're going to warp it, but don't be ham-handed in this process. Next up is, again, more M6s. You drop in there, and now those will fall back out, so may or may not do that for us here. But next on the hip parade is just to install the gasket. Again, pretty obvious what's going to happen here, so I'm going to pause, and magically there it is. I suppose you could use some kind of a gasket tackifier, but I don't really see the value in that. So we're going to next provide, what do you think? Okay, gotta get my thread locker going here. So again, sparing you the boring details, we'll put thread locker on the 4 screws and go to the next phase. Okay, thread locker applied. All right, so this is actually upside down. More than likely those lower bolts are going to drop out, but I wanted to show you that we're going to need a ball end Allen wrench to get into here, because again there's some pretty wacky interferences. So when we go to install this on the motor, we're going to pick up those two first. We're not going to worry so much about the bottom ones. We want to get those started and not get too crazy, because we don't want to cross thread or anything like that. Everything's aluminum, so we need to be delicate. Moving over to the motor in prep, it goes without saying that you want to clean this surface off. You need to remove the 4 studs, or total of 8, from the motor. You're going to, obviously the TA, the thermal actuator, has been removed here. And in the kit is this block-off plate with an O-ring. May change that to a gasket, but I believe the O-ring will work sufficiently. Also, you'll be obviously taking out the injectors, in plugging those. And let me pause for a second. I'll show you what those plugs look like. Yeah, this is what we got here. I was going to say not very fancy, but actually they are pretty darn fancy. They are aluminum, so when you go to install those, don't use a ball head. I've noticed that that it's possible that you can not necessarily strip the Allen socket, but you don't get a good bite on that. So, like I say, use a straight Allen wrench for that. That's what that looks like. Okay, so the other trick is this tab fits into this loop here. That's what coordinates, if you will, the two halves of the ITBs for the butterfly valves. Right? I can do this. Yeah, whatever. Which takes a little bit of manipulation, and there's no way I can do that with one hand. So once again, we're going to pause it, but obviously the point being that I've got to maneuver that so that fits in there, and then we get these holes aligned, and like I say, more than likely those bottom two screws are going to fall out, so I'll just take those out before I even bother with that. Okay, honestly, that wasn't all that bad. If I'm lucky, that'll stay there. And again, using our ball and Allen wrench, and there it goes. Okay, good thing this is the demonstration one. Don't do this at home. Pause this and try again. Okay, if I knew how to edit, that little episode would be on the cutting room floor, but we're back and I have actually started these. So, as I say, you want to be careful to tread lightly when you thread these in, because we don't want to cross thread any aluminum, but they should go in pretty well. And yeah, just for giggles, now those are linked together. So I'm going to fumble around and try to find the hole for these guys down here. I could bend over, but you know, what's the point of that? I might have to anyway. Well, wait a minute. Okay, this is exciting. Okay. Those are in place. And again, it's just a matter of carefully, sorry about the video, careful running those in. Couple of things. Darn it. All right, I'm a dummy. I would highly recommend, once you pull the studs out of the SPICA intake manifold, that you run a tap through them just to clean the threads. That's going to make this process a whole lot easier too. And just make sure there isn't a bunch of crud in there. So, I guess I'll pause this and I'll finish tightening that up. Okay. All tightened up. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of going slowly as you tighten that up and bring it in. The assembly does have a propensity to cock a little bit, and since it's aluminum, the aluminum will move before the stainless steel studs do. You just want to make sure that you tighten a little bit, tighten a little bit, tighten a little bit, tighten a little bit, cross tighten, bring them up slowly, make sure that your gap is even. And I think you'll find you get to a certain point when it all pops into alignment, and then your screws will, you'll be able to do that, feel it go in nice and neat. The other thing is with this prototype and this not so fancy video, I didn't put washers on these guys, but that will be in the kit. So you want to use that again. Not that we're going to lose anything with this super heavy, super thick plate, but it's just the right way to go. So this is the ITBs installed. Now, more than likely, we'll ship the plate and the ITBs as an assembly, sub-assembly, if you will. So you won't have to worry about putting that stuff together. Obviously, it was not that big of a deal. Just wanted to show you what was going on. And I suppose if for some reason you needed to take something apart. Sequence is everything on this. So you want to make sure that if for some reason you do take this stuff apart, that you recognize that you got to do it. And there's pretty much only one way to go about doing it. All right, on to the fuel rail and the injectors. Okay, this is your fuel rail assembly. It's pretty straightforward. This pipe is going to fit into this fuel rail here. You may be able to see there is an O-ring which seals that. Actually does a pretty good job. These obviously are the fuel injectors themselves. This is a plug end, which obviously isn't tightened. And this side is the threaded side for our AN fitting that'll ultimately go there. These get bolted to the ITBs, and again, this should come assembled. I say should, I guess we're doing it, so it will. So there's spacers in here to space out the fuel rail to give the proper alignment for the injectors themselves. Being a little bit indelicate with these injectors, it's probably not a great idea just have them flopping around. But again, from a prototype standpoint, and being able to show what we're doing here, that's what's happening. So I'm going to slide these two together, and then we'll bring them over here. This can be a little tricky sometimes, so I think I'm going to apply a little bit more grease here. And a bit of finagling, and then we'll mount the screws, and that's going to be most of it. Pause and do part of that right now. All right, fuel rail has been assembled, and applied a little bit of grease on the O-rings for injectors. They can be a little fiddly sometimes when we try to get them installed, so which is a good thing. You want them to be a good tight fit. Try to do this one-handed, no guarantees. So that's where the injectors are going to go. Now this is a sliding affair, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be exactly where you should be initially. Okay. You can feel the injectors pop into position. Again, sorry about the video. Actually, that Yeah, it went in pretty good, pretty well. Okay. Next up are the screws. Gotta go to switch hands here. Now, you can see that that's a little off-centered. Again, for the purposes of this, for this video, I did not put the thread locker or washers. Not sure if, we probably should have washers on there too. Anyway, not doing it on this. I know this is going to come off. Oh, look. Come on. This is quite awkward to do one-handed. There we go. And again, ball end is the way to go here. With any luck, which I doubt I have right now. It's a little bit of knee power. Okay, I got that one started. It was a really exciting video, right? There. So, if I can get a good video. Okay, yeah, you can see that this is off center relative to the hole. And again, this is just a sliding unit, if you will. So I should be able to, with a little bit of persuasion, maybe a little bit more than a little bit. No, it's just, okay. We're going to pause this for a second. Wait a minute. Wasn't that fuel rail on just a moment ago? If you're paying attention, you would know that to be the case because I forgot to put this on. The bell crank assembly, which is part of the SPICA system. Now, we do make a modification. Let me just get this in position here. Gosh, I'm either looking at the part or I'm looking at the camera, not both. Okay, so you should probably know by taking it apart how this goes together, but there's just the spring that goes into the hole, this retainer, and if we're nice, we will provide a nylock for that as well. Okay, so I started to say one modification that we do, pretty much the only cutting we do on this whole thing, is to remove the end of this bell crank that would normally go to the SPICA long rod. So we don't need that, and it actually will interfere. But we also have to put that in before we put the rail on, which I didn't do a moment ago, so that's why we had this stop. So let me try this again. Okay, this time I did get things aligned a little bit better, just a little bit fiddly. You may have noticed that I put that spring under the whatever you want to call that, this pin here, before I put this on, and then when I put it on, I realized that needed to be loose until after you get the rail in, because once again, it'll interfere. But once you got that in, boom, you're there. That all works nicely. Again, going to trim back that. Now, if for whatever reason you don't want to do that, we can provide you with one, as long as you give us core back so that we can make the modification. All right, so I did start but did not finish with my ball and Allen wrench. Which I just looked at as a 5mm. All right, 5mm for what it's worth. So let's pause on this. All right, next up would be the rod. May or may not be dog leg, probably will not have the plastic, and we'll probably have metal ends on here, but we're still debating a little bit on that. Easiest way to get those on is with a pair of small channel locks, so that's what we're going to do here. And there we go. Let me get set first. So obviously it's going to go from this guy to this guy, formerly the short rod ball